The evening was a symphony of glamour. Paris' most exclusive fashion gala shimmered under crystal chandeliers, its runway bathed in golden light as icons of the industry, designers draped in their own creations, critics with sharpened pens, and celebrities cloaked in mystique, filled the velvet-lined seats. Among them sat Johnny Depp, an enigma in his signature bohemian attire, leather bracelets stacked on his wrist, silver rings glinting like distant stars, and a demeanor of quiet intrigue. His eyes, half hidden beneath a weathered fedora, followed the models with the detached curiosity of an artist appreciating a fleeting masterpiece. The show unfolded flawlessly until she stepped into the light. Elena, a substitute model thrust into the spotlight mere hours earlier, had clawed her way into the industry through grit and sleepless nights. This was her crescendo, the moment she'd rehearsed in dingy studios and mirrored apartments. Clad in a gown that cascaded like molten silver, she moved with tentative grace, her pulse thundering in her ears. For a heartbeat, she felt invincible, until her stiletto caught the edge of the stage. A collective gasp tore through the crowd as she plummeted. The dress, once ethereal, coiled around her like a trap. Laughter erupted, sharp, unkind, the sound of 1,000 knives. Elena lay frozen, humiliation searing her cheeks as the world dissolved into a blur of flashing cameras and whispered ridicule. The show marched on, indifferent. Models sidestepped her like a stain on the runway. Then a shadow broke from the front row. Johnny Depp rose, his boots echoing faintly as he strode toward her. The crowd stilled, torn between fascination and discomfort. Elena braced for mockery, but his voice, when it came, was a lifeline. "Need a hand?" Their eyes met, his steady, hers trembling. She grasped his fingers, calloused and warm, and let him pull her upright. "Walk with me," he murmured, nodding toward the wings. But Elena shook her head, her spine straightening. The music swelled again, and this time her steps were deliberate, a rebellion cloaked in elegance. The applause that followed was hesitant, then swelling, not for the fall, but for the defiance in her lifted chin. Backstage, the air crackled with whispers. Clara, a veteran organizer with eyes like steel, cornered Elena. "You've got fire," she said, lighting a cigarette. "Most would have fled. You stared them down." Elena laughed weakly. "I face-planted in front of the world." "And owned it," Clara retorted. "That's the difference between a puppet and a phoenix." Later, as Elena peeled off the treacherous heels, a voice cut through the chaos. "You've got grit." Johnny leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his smile faint but genuine. "This industry chews up polished dolls. Be the thorn instead." Weeks later, the world dissected her Cinderella moment. Memes mocked her sprawl. Think pieces dissected her resilience. A viral video of Johnny's gesture, hashtag kindness over perfection, trended globally. Brands flooded her inbox, not for her poise, but for her humanity. At a cafe months later, Elena scribbled in a journal, Clara's words etched into her skin. "Scars make better stories than crowns." Johnny's voice echoed in her memory, a quiet prophecy. This isn't an ending. It's a prologue. The fall that rewrote fate. Elena's stumble on the runway had become a legend. Not the tale of humiliation she'd braced for, but a narrative of grit that rippled through the industry's icy facade. The same world that had once dismissed her as collateral damage now watched with grudging respect. Days later, as she sat curled on her apartment couch, sunlight filtering through dusty blinds, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost let it ring out. Telemarketers and opportunistic agents had hounded her since the viral moment, but intuition prickled. Swiping the screen, she answered, "Elena, it's Clara." The voice was honeyed steel, the same woman who'd watched her unravel backstage. "I've got a proposition." Elena stiffened. "Proposition?" "Designers are clamoring for you, not just for your face, for your fire." Clara's tone sharpened. "They want authenticity, someone who's bled on stage and still walked tall. That's currency here." Disbelief pooled in Elena's chest. Weeks ago, she'd been a nameless substitute. Now her vulnerability had become a brand. Clara listed names, luxury houses, avant-garde labels, campaigns hinging not on flawlessness, but ferocity. "This isn't a pity offer," Clara pressed. They're betting on your spine. But the window's narrow. Fashion feasts on momentum. Elena's grip tightened on the phone. Memories flickered. The cold stage floor, Johnny's calloused hand, laughter sharp as shrapnel. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because perfection's boring," Clara snorted. "You're a crack in the glass, and light's pouring through." The offer hung like a pendulum, safety or freefall. Elena closed her eyes, saw her younger self in a cramped hometown studio, blistered feet in smudged mascara. "Yes," she said, the word a vow. Overnight, Elena's world kaleidoscoped. Contracts piled high, cosmetic giants touting real beauty, designers draping her in garments that clung like armor. Photo shoots blurred into runway returns. Her face splashed across billboards with taglines like "Unbroken" and "Grace Under Fire." Yet the spotlight scalded. At a Milan show, a stylist snipped, "Smile softer, you look defiant." Elena met her gaze in the mirror. Good. Nights were lonelier. In a Paris hotel suite, she'd stare at the city's jeweled grid, tracing the arc of her rise. Johnny's words haunted her. "You're not the first to trip." She'd replay his quiet nod, the way he'd faded into shadows after steadying her. No fanfare, no cameras chasing his hero moment. The reckoning months later, backstage at New York Fashion Week, chaos reigned. Elena stood motionless as a stylist pinned her into a gown of shattered mirrors, each shard catching her reflection. Fractured, fierce. Then his voice cut through the clamor. "Still turning disasters into encores, I see." She turned. Johnny Depp leaned against a rack of sequined coats, hands tucked into a battered leather jacket. His smile was a sly curve, eyes crinkling. You remember?" Elena stammered, pulse wild. "Kid, you're hard to forget." He plucked a rose from a nearby bouquet, twirling it absently. "They've made you a symbol, huh? The girl who fell." Elena bristled. "I'm not their mascot." "Didn't say you were." He stepped closer, the rose's thorns grazing his palm. "Symbols cage people. But you?" His gaze pinned hers. "You're the key." Before she could reply, a publicist swooped in, herding Elena toward the runway. Johnny melted into the crowd, leaving the rose on her vanity. Taped to its stem, a note, "Break more stages." She turned to see Johnny Depp, leaning casually against a wall, watching her with that same calm expression she remembered so well. His smile was a little warmer this time, more knowing. Elena froze for a moment, unsure of what to say, but then a sense of ease settled over her, and she smiled back. "You seem to be everywhere I go." Johnny chuckled, pushing himself off the wall. "I'm just a fan of resilience," he said, his tone light, but with a depth that caught her attention. "You're doing great." Elena felt a flush of warmth spread across her chest. Those words from the person who had first offered her a hand when everyone else looked away felt like validation. They meant more than anything she had achieved in the industry so far. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady now. "It's because of you that I'm standing here." Johnny raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Me? You're the one who made it happen. You fell, but you got back up. I was just a small part of that moment." Elena shook her head. "You were the first to show me that I could." There was a brief silence as Johnny looked at her, his expression softening. Finally, he broke the quiet. "You've got something rare, Elena," he said. "Not just the looks or the confidence, but a heart that refuses to break no matter how hard life pushes. That's why you'll go far." Elena felt a lump form in her throat, the emotions of the past few months rushing back. She had worked so hard to prove herself, and hearing these words, so simple yet so sincere, was all she needed. "Thank you," she whispered again, this time with more emotion. Johnny smiled, then gave her a slight nod. "The world needs more people like you. Don't ever forget that." And with that, he was gone again, blending into the chaos of the backstage world. But his words stayed with Elena long after he left. She stood there for a long time, looking at her reflection in the mirror, realizing how much she had changed. She had stumbled, she had fallen, but she had risen, and she was going to keep rising, no matter what came next. The weeks following Johnny's words seemed to blur into one another as Elena's career reached new heights. She was everywhere, on magazine covers, gracing the covers of the biggest fashion houses, and walking in shows that were watched by millions. But the world she had once idolized was beginning to feel more like a prison than a dream. Behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. Elena felt like she was constantly being molded into something she wasn't. The designers wanted perfection, and the media wanted a flawless image of her. But every time she looked in the mirror, she saw the girl who had fallen on the runway, the girl who had fought through every obstacle to get where she was. That girl was still there, fighting to remain herself. It was at one of the largest fashion events of the season, a show that was the talk of the industry, that everything would come to a head. Elena had been invited to walk for a top designer, one known for being ruthless, both on and off the runway. She had heard the stories of how models were treated at his shows, the long hours, the constant pressure, but she had agreed, wanting to prove that she could handle it, that she could rise to the occasion. As the show approached, the tension backstage was palpable. Models, stylists, and makeup artists rushed around, but Elena's heart was heavy with dread. She knew the designer's reputation. She had heard stories from the other models about how he would push them to their limits. She wondered if she would be able to keep up. Johnny's words still echoed in her mind. You have something rare. But in that moment, it didn't feel rare. It felt fragile. She walked down the runway just like every other time, one step after another. The lights were blinding, and the cameras flashed in rapid succession. But there was a growing unease inside her. The weight of expectation felt heavier than ever. Halfway through her walk, she stumbled, not in the same dramatic way as before, but her foot caught awkwardly. A small falter. It wasn't the fall of the past, but the pressure to be perfect made her hesitate for just a moment longer. The designer, standing in the wings, shook his head, disappointed. Elena's heart pounded in her chest, and for a second she felt everything she had worked for slip away. The familiar fear crept back in. This was it. This was the moment where she would fail, and the world would watch. But then a familiar voice cut through the noise in her head. You have something rare, Elena. And just like that, everything shifted. Elena's steps became more confident, her posture more assured. She wasn't just walking down that runway for the cameras. She was walking for herself, for the girl who had fallen and risen. As she made her way to the end of the runway, she felt the energy change. The applause was different this time. There was a sense of awe in the air. Elena wasn't just a model now, she was a symbol of strength. Backstage, the designer's face was unreadable as she walked past him. His sharp gaze followed her, but there was something else behind it. It wasn't disappointment, it was recognition. Elena had risen. She had faced the pressure, the expectations, and the demons of the past, and she had not broken. She was more than just a pretty face in the spotlight. She was a force to be reckoned with. Later that night, as the show ended and the after-party buzzed with excitement, Elena found herself alone in a quiet corner of the venue. She had done it. She had made it through. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approach, and there he was, Johnny Depp. You did it, he said with a soft smile. You proved everyone wrong. Elena smiled back, her heart finally at peace. I didn't just prove them wrong, she said quietly. I proved to myself that I could do it. Johnny's eyes softened as he looked at her. I told you, you've got something rare. Elena took a deep breath and looked out over the crowd. The flashing lights, the chatter, the music, all of it felt distant now. She had made it, and more than that, she had stayed true to herself. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, Elena felt ready to face it. She knew that the next time she stumbled, because everyone stumbles, she would rise again. And this time, she wouldn't just be walking for the world. She'd be walking for the girl who had fallen and found the strength to stand tall. And that was the real victory. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed Elena's incredible journey of resilience and strength. If this story inspired you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on more powerful stories just like this one. Like the video if you believe in the power of overcoming obstacles, and feel free to comment below with your thoughts. How did this story resonate with you? And if you know someone who could use a little inspiration, Make sure to share this video with them. Let's spread positivity and motivation together. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next story.